So something I've been thinking about recently and reflecting on is my journey of becoming a pilot and kind of just how it all happened. So I just wanted to film this video and kind of share that whole journey and process and what it was like. Um, so starting back when I was a little kid, I'll put a clip of in a video here, but my mom actually saved a drawing that I made when I was in like second or third grade. I can't remember for sure, but I wrote something like what I'd like to be when I grow up is a pilot because it could be fun to fly. And then I drew a picture of an airplane of like a little Cessna 172, or that's what I was trying to draw anyway. And I wrote on there that I daydream about airplanes. And I think, um, again, just reflecting back, I was just thinking like, how did this actually all happen? Because I think there's a lot of times in our lives where we want something, but we get so hung up on like the how it'll happen. We get paralyzed in the how, and then it stops us from taking action, and then we never fulfill our dreams. But I wanted to make this video because I'm literally living proof that your dreams can come true, and that I'm a firm believer that the law of attraction is real, and that might even be why you're watching this video right now. But yeah, going back to what I was saying, my mom saved this drawing from back when I was a little kid, like second or third grade. And that's what I would do when I was little. I always daydreamed, literally in my head, flying airplanes and what it would be like to be a pilot and flying. What I wanted to do was be an airline pilot. I would daydream of like flying people around and in an airliner. So what kind of sparked my interest in aviation in general was when I was little, my dad would take me to air shows all the time. I grew up in a town called Bismarck, North Dakota. And we'd always drive like an hour north every summer to this air show at the Minot Air Force Base, and just instantly fell in love with flying and aviation and knew that that's something when I got bigger and older that I wanted to do. So a little bit about my story. Moving forward from there, that's what sparked my interest in aviation. But moving forward, throughout high school, I was doing all kinds of stuff. I worked as soon as I could. I got a job when I was 14, washing cars at a car wash, doing all kinds of stuff. But I knew going into the aviation industry, it was going to take two things: a lot of time and a lot of money. And obviously, in high school, I didn't have really either to give. But a skill that I did learn in high school, I worked a job, but something that I did, me and a buddy would go door to door, door knocking to sell people to mow their grass in the summertime, and in the winter it snowed a lot. We'd go door to door and move people's snow. But other than that, I started doing that like 14, 15 years old back home, made money on the side doing that. And then what I started doing is got into flipping cars. So back home, a lot of people like Subarus because they're all-wheel drive for the winter, and a common problem with them is the head gaskets would always go out, and a lot of times it would cost more than what the car's worth to fix at a shop if you took it to like a Subaru dealership than what it's actually worth. So then you could buy these Subarus that needed head gaskets for, usually I'd pay like $1,000, $1,500. I'd buy them, and then the parts to fix it, head gaskets, intake gaskets, and like a timing kit, would cost like $300 back then. I'm not sure what it is with inflation nowadays, but that's usually what I'd have into it, and then my time usually take like 6 to 8 hours to do the whole job, and then usually turn around and flip each car and make anywhere from like $2,000 to $3,000. So I did that throughout high school, and then I also flipped a lot of other things like boats, jet skis, you name it, I probably flipped it. That's just a little bit about my background as far as what helped me get to where I am today and accomplishing that goal. Fast forward to the end of high school, I met my now wife, and we had a kid right out of high school, senior year, and then boom, I was like, oh shit, my life's over. My hopes and dreams of becoming a pilot might as well forget it. But I actually didn't hold that thought. I still knew in the back of my mind it's a temporary. I didn't even look at it as like a setback. I just gave me a reason to even push forward more and figure out a way to do it. But I thought, like the only way now is to go get a full-time job. So immediately right out of high school, I didn't go to college or anything because I obviously had a kid. I needed health insurance. I couldn't just go away and be away for 4 years because my wife was actually a year behind me. She was still in high school, so I had to be the provider. So I instantly went into the sheet metal workers union, started making like 16 or 18 bucks an hour, and I did that for like I think 2 years total. So I had health insurance for myself and my kid, was able to provide. But on the side of working the job, I continued to flip cars, all kinds of stuff. In the winter, move snow. In the summer, cut grass, you name it, cut trees, whatever it took, really. But yeah, I ended up saving up like $10,000, $10 or $15,000, and then in my second year of doing sheet metal, I started taking flying lessons at my local airport in Bismarck on my lunch breaks, on weekends, basically whenever the weather was good and whenever time allowed. Now that I had some money saved up, I started flying. And then I think within 8 months, I got my private pilot's license, which you can't, go fly for hire. Once you have your private pilot's license, you can basically just fly around for fun. So I still had a ways to go, and by the time I was done with that, I pretty much burned through the whole like $10,000. And it wasn't able to do much with it other than just go fly around and take friends and family up. So, I was kind of like, well, shit, what now? I still don't, I didn't have the means of going to college. I didn't want to be away for 4 years to go to college. And on top of that, I didn't want to wait 4 years anyway to achieve everything. So what I ended up doing, like I said, I was doing the sheet metal job, and a job actually came available at the place where I was doing my flying lessons to refuel airplanes. And after 2 years in the sheet metal industry, I think I was up to like 20 bucks an hour. And like I said, I had my health insurance completely paid for myself and my son. But this job, popped up at the airport to refuel airplanes. And I thought, it's not flying airplanes, but guess what? I knew in the back of my head, I'm like, I could be around airplanes all day. Because I didn't really like the sheet metal work or really the people in general that I was working with. It was kind of just low vibes. And I'm the type where like I got to be moving, I got to be outside, and I can't just wake up and go to the same place and do the same thing every single day. So I was making like 20 bucks an hour, had health insurance paid for me and my son, and this job was only offering, I think it was like $14.25 to start. And they had health insurance, but I had to have, if I wanted health insurance, it was going to get taken out of my paycheck. My phone died, but so what I was saying is the job that I ended up I ended up taking the job at the airport, making $14.25 an hour, and didn't have health insurance. Well, I had health insurance, but it was taken out of my paycheck if I elected to have health insurance for me and my son. So after taxes and having health insurance taken out, I think what I was actually making was like maybe $8.50 to $9 an hour take home. But I wasn't too worried about it because, like I said, I was still flipping cars and doing all that on the side. And then no matter what job I ever worked, I always made more doing my own thing on the side than I was working my job. I just think I never fully trusted myself because I still felt like I needed that security of that 9 to 5. So that kind of always just held me back, along with what I was saying. When I was telling like my friends and family, like, hey, I think I'm going to go work at the airport and do this job refueling airplanes, everybody was instantly like, are you sure? Like friends and family, everyone was like, are you sure? You're only making this much and you need health insurance and blah, blah, blah. So, it's very important, like your inputs equal your outputs. what comes in your brain becomes like that inner voice, and like I think holds a lot of people back. But something that I've always done is really just listen to my intuition or God, whatever you want to call it, and had like an inner calling that was telling me that, like, Tanner, just trust the process, trust the path. You need to go work that job. Something inside was telling me that was my next move. If I wanted to get, uh, you know, from where I was to here, I knew, like, something, like I said, something inside me was telling me, take that job. Don't worry about the pay. Everything will work out. It's crazy because it did. So I ended up, quitting the job doing sheet metal, making $20 an hour to go work at the airport, and refuel planes and make, like I said, take home $8.50, $9 an hour. So it wasn't a hell of a lot, but it was weird because I started working there instantly. I was way happier, healthier. I was outside all the time. I think it's important to be outside and be around the sun. I think it just naturally helps boost your immune system and your vibe rather than just inside all day. When I was doing sheet metal, I was cooped up inside all day. There was really no windows. You're working in like dark areas. So it just wasn't, the right vibe for me. It might work for some people, but it just wasn't for me. So I took that job refueling airplanes, and then I was still, like I said, flipping cars, doing all kinds of stuff on the side to make some extra money. And I continued to do my flight training. The next rating was my instrument rating, so I was working towards that. But like I said, I pretty much burned through all the money I had saved up just to get my private pilot's license. And now I was only making take home $8 to $9 an hour, still flipping cars and doing things on the side, but that kind of ate into just like living expenses, paying for, our child and everything, daycare. It all adds up pretty quick. But I was still doing some flying, working towards my instrument. And I was just like, damn, this is going to take forever. So what ended up happening, my flight instructor that I was flying with at the place where I was refueling airplanes in Bismarck, she ended up asking me one day, she's like, Tanner, what is your goal? What do you want to do? And I said, I want to go all the way. Like, I want to become an airline pilot. And she's like, well, why don't you go, questions that everybody asks, why don't you go to college? Why don't you do this? What's holding you back, basically? And I said, well, same thing I said in the beginning of this video. I have a kid, girlfriend at that time, broke. I don't really have many options, so I'm just doing like the best I can here. And then this is tying into the law of attraction and listening to your own voice rather than, the voices outside of you. I believe, like I said, it was leading me to go work here, and then led to this situation right here. So the conversation that I'm telling you about. And then she said, why don't you go, or she said something along the lines like, why don't you go talk to this guy in South Dakota? She said he has a small flight school. He's often needs flight instructors and can't really find them because it's just a small flight school in like the middle of nowhere, South Dakota. She said, I had a friend who was in a similar situation as you. She was from California. Her name was Heidi. And she had her own plane. She had a private pilot's license, but similar situation. She didn't have a whole lot of money, but she wanted to fly for a career. She wanted to go all the way. And what she ended up doing is moving to this flight school in South Dakota and working for this guy. And he ended up getting her through everything that she needed. And in return, she flight instructed for him. So I thought about it, and I was like, a few days went by. It was just kind of lingering in the back of my mind, like, I don't know. I was just thinking about it, and then I was thinking, the thoughts that were going through my mind is like, sounds too good to be true. He probably wouldn't want me to work for him. He probably doesn't need anybody right now. It's probably not worth my time. All the basically limiting beliefs and thoughts that would come through your mind, I was having. But, after like 3 or 4 days or like a week or so, I decided, I'm not just going to call him and just be like, hey, want to get me all set up, get me the rest of my ratings. So what I ended up doing, I wrote him a handwritten letter, just telling him basically my whole story, who I am, where I'm located, where I'm at in my journey of aviation, and basically what I'm looking to do and what I was willing to put in and the value that I could provide. I sent the letter off to him and thought, like, again, limiting beliefs, thought, like, hey, whatever, hopefully something happens, but I doubt I'm ever going to hear back from him. I sent that letter off, I think it was on a Wednesday, and then it was a Friday, like, by Friday, I got a phone call from a South Dakota number, and I was like, oh, damn. I didn't answer it because I was honestly, like, scared. I was like, we'll just let it go to voicemail, and it did. And it ended up being his receptionist, and she just basically left a voicemail saying, like, hey, we got your letter. The owner of the flight school's name was Morris. She was like, Morris would like to set up a time to meet you. Give us a call back. Basically go from there. So instantly after listening to the voicemail, I called her back, the receptionist, and I was like, hey, I got your voicemail. What are the next steps? Does he want to, like, hop on the phone? And she's like, no, he'd like to meet you in person. And like I said, this was on like a Friday. And then I was like, because to drive there, it was like 6 hour drive. And flying there, it was like 2 hours. And I was like, well, when does he want to meet? She said, ASAP, can you be here tomorrow? And I think I had to work the next day on that Saturday. And then Sunday, I had stuff going on the weekend. I was like, well, how about Monday? So we'll set that up. And then what I ended up doing, I rented a plane from my work on Monday, and I ended up telling them, because I didn't want to just be like, hey, I'm gonna quit this job to go do this, because I didn't know for sure anyway. But I think I ended up telling them. I brought my dad with to kind of help with like setting it up. I told them I had to fly my dad for like an emergency to South Dakota, and I needed to rent one of their planes. So that's what we ended up doing. Me and my dad flew there, flew in, and then walked in the door to the flight school. And then I already did some research prior about the flight school. I knew what the owner looked like and all that. Flew in, and then I walked in, and he's just sitting. It was kind of awkward, honestly. I walked in, and he was just he's always sat in this chair, just watch TV, and like he doesn't talk a whole lot. So we walked in. He was just kind of sitting in his chair, chilling, and then went up to him and said, "Hey, you must be Morris." Yeah. Said, "I'm Tanner. How's it going?" Blah blah blah. Ended up talking inside for like 10-15 minutes, just brief, little bit, like going into like a little bit about me, what I'm doing, and all that. And then he gave me like a tour of the flight school, all the airplanes, the shop, kind of how the whole, how his whole process and system works. And then towards the end of the conversation, he's just like, yeah, so, what do you want? And I'm like, because I kind of wrote in my letter, like I didn't say like, hey, can you just get me my ratings? I just basically just said like, hey, I connected with somebody who knows, because the lady that my flight instructor that was from California that had her own plane, from doing research prior to going there, I found out that she still works there. So in my letter I just wrote, like somebody that I know, basically know somebody that works for you, and I know you did X, Y, and Z with them, and I was just kind of seeing like if you are still open to doing anything else like that with anybody. So yeah, towards the end of the conversation, he's just like, so what do you want to do? And I'm like, I want to become a pilot. And he's like, all right, yeah. He asked like if I had anything I could put down. Like he was willing to basically get me through everything, but he was asking like if I had any money that I could put down. And I think I had like $6,000 saved up at that time that I was using, just to have a cushion for living expenses for me and my wife and kid, and just, chipping away at that slowly towards my instrument rating back home. And I told them basically like, yeah, I have like $6,000 saved up of my own money, but if I would kind of need that to live off of. So he's like, all right. He's like, yeah, here's what we'll do. He said, I'll do this for you, but he's like, I need you here, like now, like today, if it was possible, because like I said, he was at that time. He didn't have very. I think he only had one flight instructor at that time, and like 20 students that were there, 15 or 20. So he's like, again, law of attraction, timing. I believe God, the universe, whatever you believe in. There is some higher power, whatever it is that you believe in, but it moves people, places, and things in divine timing for everything to work out as it should. And I'm a firm believer in that, and I always will be. So it was literally perfect. There couldn't have been a perfect time for all of this to happen. So yeah, we ended up doing it. What he ended up doing, we made like an agreement, a contract stating that he was gonna basically, I was gonna move down there, and like, mind you, this was on a Monday. I flew there. He wanted me to be there, like fly. He wanted me to fly home, basically pack my bags and come home. But I ended up telling him, I'm like, well, I have a job back home. I don't really want to just go back and just be like, hey, thanks, see you guys. And then I told him too, like, I have a wife and kid. And I briefly discussed this with, or a girlfriend and kid at that time. We're now married, but I briefly discussed like this whole thing with her prior to this. And I basically told her, like, I don't really think it's going to happen, but, we'll see what happens. And it ended up happening. So I told him, like, I got to kind of go home. I'm like, I'm for sure doing it. Like, there's no doubt about it. But I was like, just give me like a week to 2 weeks. I gotta go home, break the ice with her. I'd like to put my 2 weeks in at my job, or at least like 1 week's notice, so I'm not just like, hey, thanks, see you guys, and just kind of figure all that out. So we agreed to that. He's like, all right. Um, he gave me a week. He's like, let's just do a week. So flew back home with my dad. Ended up telling my work, like, hey, my boss was cool with it. He understood because he knew when I got the job refueling airplanes that like something that I wanted to do was go all the way and become a pilot, and then eventually work for them, because what they did was charter airplanes, flight instructing, like I was doing there with my instructor there, all kinds of stuff. So broke the ice with him, told him basically like, hey, I got this opportunity. I got to do it right. I'm sorry, like I'll work until the end of the week here, but after that I have to dip out. And then broke the ice with my girlfriend. Told her like, hey, gonna be moving like 6 hours away in a week. You know what I mean? So it was kind of like, holy crap. Um, so yeah, did all that. Ended up packing my bags. This was in the summer of 2018, August of 2018. I think the middle of July is when I flew down there, and then I arrived in South Dakota to start working. Well, not working, but basically get my ass in gear and get all the rest of my ratings that I needed. The beginning of August 2018, I got there, and then in order to basically become valuable to him, because going there I was of no value. I couldn't instruct, I couldn't teach anybody, I couldn't fly commercially for hire. Like I said, all I had was my private pilot's license, but it was a step in the right direction and gave me like a head start towards getting everything else done. Um, so I got there. I ended up getting my instrument rating, my commercial rating, multi-engine, and certified flight instructor, all within 3 months. So I got there in August. Ended up getting everything done. I think everything was all said and done by like early November, and then I didn't get to go back home very much to go see my wife, or I say wife now because we're married, but girlfriend and kid at that time. But after I was all done with everything, I'm like, hey, I'd like to just go home for a few days. So I ended up driving home out and just, celebrate, like, hey, I got everything done. Which normally getting all of that instrument, commercial, multi-engine, certified flight instructor usually takes people, like I said, if you go to a college, 4 years. I ended up getting it done in like three to 4 months, start to finish. And that's because when I went there, that's all I did. Literally woke up 6 o'clock in the morning. I would do ground school, where basically you're learning everything in the book. I do like 4 or 5 hours of that every day, and then usually 4 to 6 hours of flying training every single day. So it was intense, but it was a lot of fun. I met a lot of great people too, a lot of friends I still stay in touch with. But yeah, so after I went home, visited them, came back, started flight instructing, brand new flight instructor. And then, that's when you really realize, like, you don't know what you don't know. So, passing everything is one thing, but then once you actually push comes to shove, and now it's up to you and it's in your hands to basically transmute what you have up here and your skills and knowledge into somebody that's brand new. Like I said, you got to basically know it to teach it. So I really, becoming a flight instructor, really got to know myself and like a lot of self-discovery. Yeah, that's basically like the whole story there of how I ended up becoming a pilot. And then what I ended up doing, I instructed for him for about 8 to 9 months after I got my flight instructor certificate and all that. Built up a bunch of hours. I think I built up to like 1,200 hours total. And then I ended up moving back home so I could be with my girlfriend and kid again. And then ended up taking a job where I was refueling airplanes, but this time as a pilot. And then the thing about aviation too is there's no flying job that's where like like a regular 9 to 5 where like you clock in, start the airplane up, and go fly around for 8 hours. It's not how it works. Usually, most flights, no matter what you're doing, can be anywhere from an hour to a couple hours typically. So when in the downtime, what I ended up doing, I didn't really want to refuel planes anymore because I felt like, ahead of that. And something that I was also doing when I was in South Dakota, when the weather was crappy or there was downtime, I would work in the shop or I'd help out on maintenance on the airplanes and all that. So I got to log a bunch of hours too towards getting my A&P certificate, which basically certifies you to work on airplanes. So that's basically what I did when I moved back home. Started doing flight instructing, survey, and then some charter flights. And then, like I said, in the downtime, working in the shop. But yeah, that's basically, my testimony and my story of whatever you want to call it, the law of attraction, God, whatever. Just listening to that inner voice and being able to tune everything else out around you, all the opinions, all of the limiting beliefs, because we all have them, no matter what. I even have them today for things that I'm currently doing now. But just really wanted to make this video and put it out there. Hopefully it helps you in your journey. That's basically it. I'm going to do more videos, more podcasts about, deep diving more into like everything that I was kind of talking about in this video. My journey, like flipping stuff to, start in aviation and all that. But yeah, just really wanted to make this video. Hopefully it gave you some value. If it did, I'd appreciate hit that like button. Share it with somebody who might be able to benefit from it. Until next time, peace.